So right now we're going to talk you through 4 really easy passive income ideas as a way of funding your lifestyle, or indeed rolling it up so that you can have even more income later down the line. And stick around, because at the end we're going to share with you an easy way to learn all the investing basics so you can get up and running and get investing.
If you're new here, then don't forget to subscribe using the button below, and do leave us any comments and questions and we'll get back to you. We'll be pleased to help. So a passive income is one where you give up some time or some money or a bit of both right now in order to generate that income in the future. The opposite would be an active income where, say, you've got a regular job and you get paid every month for the time that you give up. The beauty of a passive income is that once you've put in that initial time or money, it should keep building and rewarding you indefinitely. Think of it as investing in your future self. So here are 4 ideas about how to get income from investing. We're going to look at dividends from shares, interest from bonds, income from property, and then also alternatives, which is basically just a catch-all term for everything else.
So we're going to start with dividends from shares. That's income from shares. Now, if you own any shares, you are entitled as a shareholder to a slice of the profits whenever the company directors decide to pay them out. And they might decide to do this once every 3 months, every 6 months, maybe every year. It depends on the company. Now, the important thing to remember about dividends is the income isn't certain. The directors might decide to increase that dividend or decrease it depending on how profitable the company is being, or maybe if they want to take some cash and reserve it for projects in the future. Now, you'll get an idea of how big your dividend will be by the yield. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we've got a link to a video on exactly that. Now, one way to minimize the ups and downs of these different payments is to hold a number of different companies, but we wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that, as it can be quite an expensive way of accessing these sorts of investments. We would recommend using funds. Now, they come in lots of different flavors, but they all work in the same way in that they pool investors' money together to buy a whole range of different companies, usually across a number of different sectors. Now, we have done a number of videos on funds, how they work, and also how to choose funds, so please check out some of those videos in our channel.
Okay, so idea for income number 2, bonds. Now, bonds are essentially a form of IOU, and they're issued by companies and governments. But when you lend the company or government money, they will then pay you interest on the money that you've lent them. So think of it like paying interest on a mortgage or a loan. The amount of interest you'll get depends on who you're lending the money to. Companies tend to go bust more often than governments, and so the interest rates that you get on loans to companies will tend to be higher. Again, one way to deal with that is to buy a bond fund, where a professionally qualified and trained fund manager will choose bonds for a portfolio that they believe will provide the best balance of risk and return. One word of caution though, the interest rates on bonds are pretty low at the moment, and indeed they have been ever since the financial crisis, so the returns that you might get are perhaps not as good as they would have been in the past.
Number 3, rental income from property. Now, this is a pretty well-known pathway to generating a passive income. All you got to do is buy a house and then charge more in rent than you've paid for your mortgage, which is pretty simple, right? Well, it is if you've got enough of a deposit to get that mortgage and you want the hassle of being a landlord. I mean, come on, we've all watched the TV repeats of Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlord. Well, there is actually another way, a way of doing it without having to buy the bricks and mortar yourself. What is it? Yes, you've guessed it, a property investment fund. Now, these can invest in commercial properties like shops or warehouses, or in residential properties like student accommodation, or a mix of both. Now, of course, the problem is one of the properties doesn't pay their rent, but the great thing about a property investment fund is that you've got other properties within it that will hopefully cushion the blow and continue to pay their rent if one of them skips out.
Okay, so our fourth and final idea for passive income, and its alternative assets. Now, don't worry, that's just a jargon term for pretty much anything else that we haven't already talked about, but it could include solar power, peer-to-peer lending, music rights, or healthcare buildings. Now, all of these can generate an income in one way or another, but they are actually quite hard to invest in for yourself. And this is where the investment trust structure comes into its own, because it allows ordinary investors like you and me to go out and buy these kinds of alternative assets. The investment trust just gathers up all of the income from these kinds of alternative investments, and then it can pay it out to us as investors.
So there you have it. 4 ways of generating a passive income. And you can use these types of investments to pay yourself that income, or you can roll it up. You can reinvest that income to buy more of the same, whether it was shares, bonds, property, or alternatives. And like a snowball rolling down the hill, picking up more snow, it just means your income in the future will be bigger. But as we said, that is not all. We've actually got a free 7-day email course which teaches you all of the basics of investing and has lots of different strategies in it, including for income. All you need to do is to click the link in the description, put in your email address, and we'll send you 1 email per day for 7 days with everything you need to know to get investing.
So that's it. We hope you found it enjoyable and, more importantly, useful. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe. Just click the link below. Also, check out the other videos that are linked in the description, and do sign up for the 7-day course. See you again next time.
Bye.